Welcome back. Well, today I am joined by Dr. Valentina Bonev, who is here on behalf of Breastlink. Well, Dr. Bonev, so nice to see you again. How are you?
It's wonderful to see you too, Lisa. It's always a pleasure.
Good. Well, I know the last time we talked, you were fairly new to the group. So tell me how
Right.
it's been going.
It's been going really well. We've been seeing a lot more patients. I think people are kind of coming out more because of things kind of changing with the pandemic and restrictions getting lifted. So that's good. People are starting to go back to see their doctors.
Good. Well, that's a good thing for sure, for sure. Now, you are a breast surgical oncologist, but
Right.
you don't just do surgery. There's a lot of other things that you do as well, and that would be evaluating people's mammograms or maybe tests or things like that. So we're kind of talking about genetic testing. Can you give me an overview of what genetic testing is?
Right. So what we're doing here at Breastlink, patients who are getting their annual mammogram, their screening mammogram, for example, we're having them fill out their personal and family history, specifically asking questions about cancer, and not just breast cancer, ovarian cancer, colon cancer, etc. And if they, based on their responses, if they're meeting national guidelines, we will let them know that they qualify for genetic testing, which is usually a blood draw or even just a swab that you put in your mouth. Very easy to do because some people don't want to do the blood draw adverse to needles. So it's very easy to do. And some of these patients, they're high risk because they have multi-generations of, let's say, breast cancer.
Mhm.
And we want to detect these people sooner rather than later so we can come up with a game plan for them.
So is the genetic testing, is that kind of like, I remember there was a lot of celebrities that were doing this, like Angelina Jolie. Is that the kind of
Right.
testing?
Right, yeah. So when she first came out, she had a mother with breast cancer who I believe had the BRCA or BRCA mutation, and Angelina Jolie got tested for that. So that is the big risk factor for developing breast cancer. So we're absolutely testing for those genes. So it's BRCA1 and 2. There are two genes, and then we're also testing for other maybe lesser known breast cancer, ovarian cancer genes, and some genes include a PALB2
Mhm.
that definitely do increase women's risk of developing breast cancer.
Now, would the testing only be available to those people that have markers like history and things like that? Or what if you just decided, you know what, I want to do it?
Honestly, I've encountered a lot of patients who just want to know. They want to know information. They feel like, there's some history of, let's say, cancer, but perhaps they don't meet national guidelines. And if patients want to get tested and they're educated about the risk and benefits of it and the implications of it, we're more than happy to facilitate it. Absolutely.
Okay, because I guess the reason why I'm asking is, some cancers like skin cancer may not be as, scary, but of course melanoma is, but maybe just your basic squamous or something like that. Would it show for that too?
It's more for melanoma.
Okay.
Honestly, yeah, are the inheritance patterns for that. But I will tell you, we do get patients who really don't even have a family history of pretty much anything,
Mm.
except they end up presenting at a young age, sometimes in their 30s, 40s, maybe even their early 50s, and they end up getting diagnosed with a very aggressive form of breast cancer. And that alerts us, there's something else going on. And then oftentimes we'll test those patients and they will come back with the mutation in, let's say, the BRCA mutation, but no one else in their family has it. So there's
Wow.
so much we don't know about. But then on the other hand, there's also patients where every single member in their family, every generation have, let's say, breast cancer. And no one in that family has the gene. We test the patient. They don't have a history of breast cancer, but we test them for genetics. No mutation. So there's also a lot of other genes, perhaps,
Mhm.
or other factors we don't know about. So we're still, breast cancer and other cancers, as you know, is constantly evolving the management and diagnosis.
Exactly, exactly. And I think we've talked about this before where precision medicine does come in and, obviously genetic testing is something to start that process. And then as time goes on, if you are diagnosed with something, then they can, more identify what your treatments would be. So yeah, good information. So, okay. So Ambry Genetics, what is that?
Ambry Genetics is the company that we are working with. So our program is being called the CARE program,
Mhm.
in that, like I said, patients coming in for their mammogram and identifying those who are higher risk. But sometimes, unfortunately, let's say people's insurance are not covered with it. We also work with other genetic companies as well. And sometimes patients say, you know what, my mom or sister were tested with this other company. I want to be tested, the same panel, the same test, and we can do that as well. We're very accommodating. And honestly, every company, they actually do have their own, there's different panels with different number of genes, different kind of focus of, are we going to look for maybe also pancreatic cancer type of genes? So there's actually, it's good because there's a lot of options out there for patients.
So let's talk about some of the testing that you can do through the mail. For instance, 23andMe, right? I can't remember if it's that one or another one that actually tells you are predisposed to certain types of disease. So do you ever talk to people about those kinds of tests?
It's come up in conversation. To be honest, I don't know much about those tests, but I would be cautious about those tests and the accuracy
Okay.
of those tests. And just because they show everything's all good, it doesn't really mean that. I think seeing a professional, a physician who is trained in this and can educate why we should get a test or why shouldn't we, and what are your risk factors, what should we look for. And even let's say they get testing and it is negative, they can still be high risk, and there are measures that we can do to help lower their risk of developing cancer in the future.
I would imagine that your genetic testing is much more intense than what you might pay for online.
Right, and a lot of those testing you get online are also kind of telling you maybe your family is from a different part of the world, and it's some of the stuff is questionable, the results.
Well, I would imagine it is, but fun nonetheless. But I did want to
Right.
specifically ask you about some of them that do talk about potential health issues. So I wanted to clarify that. So perfect. So let's say someone does the genetic testing, they find out something is going on. What is the next step?
So let's say someone has a pathogenic mutation in the breast cancer gene, for example, the BRCA gene. So then there's a couple of things that we need to talk about. First, their risk of developing breast and ovarian cancer is going to be much higher than the general population.
Hmm.
And depending on the mutation that they have, which gene, the 1 or 2, it could be over 60%, even upwards around 80% of getting breast cancer, extremely high. So we talk about potentially prophylactic mastectomy with or without reconstruction with a plastic surgeon. We talk about chemo prevention, which is oral medication that they would help lower their risk, and that's managed by the medical oncologist.
Mhm.
And then we also offer increased surveillance screening. So the standard of care is to get annual mammograms, but if you have this mutation, therefore you're high risk, we're also going to recommend oftentimes an annual MRI. So you're getting a mammogram or an MRI every 6 months. You're going to be seeing the physician every 6 months, having a breast exam. And the goal is to detect something early rather than later so that it is treatable for the patient.
So I think we've talked about this before, and also other doctors talk about, a preventative. So that obviously is a huge preventative measure to be able to make sure that you catch something early. But 9 times out of 10, when you catch something early, isn't it fairly a high percentage that you can cure it and have it go away?
Absolutely. However, if that patient happens to have the BRCA mutation, they oftentimes are diagnosed younger in life, and they have a more aggressive form of cancer.
Mm.
And what seemingly is, let's say, a small cancer easily treatable with surgery, we end up finding out it has spread to other parts of the body. So it's therefore very aggressive.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad that you guys do the genetic testing and offer that, because it must be somewhat peace of mind for some people. And that way they can identify what they have to look forward to or not look forward to.
Absolutely. It's all about what I say to patients, education and knowing what your options are.
Exactly. Well, Dr. Bonev, thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's always great talking to you.
All right. And we'll be right back after this.